Aloha and welcome to another episode of Konnakol 2020. Today is January 14th, and this is part 2 of the two-part series in which I explain the basic language of Konnakol. So if you haven't watched the previous episode, I suggest you do it now, or otherwise this video will not make too much sense. So yeah, I'll take the time. You go. You go and watch it and I'll be here. So, yesterday we overviewed the language we use to recite phrases in Konnakol, and today we are going to look at the second complementary aspect of that, which is the language for recited gaps. Gaps or pauses or silences in Konnakol are as important as the phrases themselves. Both are constantly interrelated like yin and yang. There is no phrase without a pause and vice versa. When we write down gaps within a composition, we do it within parentheses so that we can tell them apart quickly from the phrases themselves. For example, we read this line, which is a tirmanam of 32 beats, as one phrase of 5 beats, followed by one gap of 1 beat, then another 2 phrases of 5 beats each, followed by a gap of 1 beat again, and then followed by a final trio of 5 beats. The gaps are marked in red. And if we recite this, it is tadikinatom, 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 tadikinatom. In this table, you can see how to recite gaps of 1 to 10 beats long. We have already seen just now that for a 1 beat gap, we simply don't say anything. So it's really just like a silence in this case. But we will recite a 2 beat gap as Dhim or Tham sometimes. It's important that the duration of the gap is exactly 2 beats, so you need to be extra careful. That is Dhim or Tam. So if our beat is takadimi takajunu takadimi takajunu dim takajimi takajunu dim 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 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 dim 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 dim. The phrase for a 3 beat gap is ding or tang. Make sure here that you pronounce all the components of this syllable. So it's di n g or ta n g, or otherwise you will quickly get lost, I speak from experience. Moving on, the phrase for a 4 beat gap is dim, or alternatively tam, which is an extension of the 2 beat gap, which is, dim, tam. By the way, when do you do dim and when do you do tam? It's a matter of style, honestly. They are both equally valid, so to speak, and sometimes your guru will give you a phrase that uses dim and another that uses tam, but you need to know that both are okay. So the phrase we use to recite a 5 beat gap is Dhim-Dhing OR ThamThang, which, as you can see, is nothing but a 2 beat and a 3 beat gap, one after the other. And by the way, do you notice how different this language is from the phrases we saw yesterday? This is by design, not by accident, because in this way you can clearly and distinctly express the structure of any composition that has both phrases and gaps. Okay, the phrase for a 6 beat gap is ding ding or tang tang, that is, again, placing 2 3 beat gaps together. The phrase for a 7 beat gap is Dhim-Dhim-Dhing or ThamThamThang, which, as you can imagine, is nothing but putting together 2 2-beat gaps followed by 1 3-beat gaps. 2 2 3 makes 7. The phrase for an 8-beat gap is 2 4-beat gaps one after the other, which is Dhim or Tahang Tahang. And the phrase for 9 is 3 times the phrase for a 3-beat pause or gap. That is ding, 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 or tang, tang, tang. And so we arrive at the end of this table with a phrase for a 10-beat gap, which, you guessed it, is nothing but two 5-beat gaps put together. Dim, ding, dim, ding, or tam, tang, tam, tang. Remember yesterday's composition? This is a korvai composition that is, we started and it was all just a bunch of numbers. And after we replaced all the phrases with the values that we learned, we came to this. Now that we know the code for the gaps, which are the numbers in parentheses, we can replace all those 4s in brackets with dhim, which is our phrase for a gap of 4. And what we get is the final form of this korvai. So yes, now that we know the language, we have effectively decrypted the code. That is, we turned a bunch of seemingly random numbers into a very, very cool composition. Here's how you would write this composition in Aditalam with a subdivision of 4 beats. And this is how you would play it. So let's hear how it sounds and try to follow along. Dhim, tadihim, takadihim, takita dhim, takadimi dhim, tadikinatam dhim, tadikinatam tadikinatam dhim, tadikinatam 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 tadihim, takadihim, takita dhim, takadimi dhim, tadikinatam dhim, tadikinatam dhim, takatadikinatam dhim, takatadikinatam takatadikinatam dhim, takatadikinatam 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 takadihim, takita dhim, takadimi dhim, tadikinatam dhim, tadikinatam dhim, takatadikinatam dhim, tatum tadikinatam dhim, takadigu tadikinatam dhim, takadigu tadikinatam takadigu tadikinatam dhim, takadigu tadikinatam takadigu tadikinatam takadigu tadikinatam. Beautiful, huh? So this is it. You now know how to recite the most common phrases and gaps in Konnakol. So there are, of course, you can imagine alternative ways of reciting these phrases and gaps. And definitely we have phrases that are longer than 10 beats. But you know what? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. In future videos, let me tell you, I will be spending less time on these basic terminology issues and more time practicing cool compositions, which is what we're all here for, right? So anyway, thank you for sticking with me until the end of the video. I've been Carlitos from Slovenia, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.